Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Here's with the screen share. And today we are going to do a little bit of Torah Tmima. And you can see I started. And I'm staying with this well thing because it's peculiar, right? It's unusual part of the narrative. So these are just other things, right? This isn't quite on target as the Midrash was in helping us, but it's just sort of interesting stuff that I thought you might enjoy.
Can I ask you a question before we start?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so I actually went back and reviewed your recording last night. So I'm now a part of the 20 viewers, but you actually did get viewers on your recording. So anyway, the question I had was, how did we go from 4 wells to 5 wells? Because the first part of it was there are 4 wells, and basically for the 4 tribes, and then the second part of it was there are 5 wells, representing, the 5 books of the Torah. And, right. There was a lot of evidence on the second part around, quotations that indicated that there were 5 wells. So right. Is there something in there that disputes those, anyway, I just don't know how we,
I agree.
So I don't know which, right. Go ahead.
Right, you're pointing out an inconsistency. So the 5th well was done separately. We actually haven't read it yet, I don't think.
No, we didn't. You said so in the passage several times.
Well, so I think I said that we had read it.
No, you said we hadn't read it yet.
That is correct.
Right.
We hadn't read it yet, and we will come to it. And it's after he makes this agreement with Avimelech. So it's possible that the first rabbi who likes the idea of 4 wells is not counting that 5th well. That would be the best example. At least that's the simplest explanation I could give you for it. And
I was just
go ahead.
No, I was just more curious than anything. So
right. So that would, I mean, clearly it's separated off from the other 4. But the whole point, I think, for me anyway, was the idea of foreshadowing, that he had the idea of foreshadowing, but there probably is some deeper symbolism involved in why he went in that direction. And for the rabbis, of course, the 5 books, right? And we know, because we're so comfortable with the idea of wells and Torah, and I mean, that's a very well-established metaphoric meaning. And we'll get into it, I think, here today in some of the commentary. Okay, so let's go into this. So
thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Be'er mayim chayim. So, right, a well of living water. Amar Rabbi Chanina, said Rabbi Chanina, Haro'eh be'er b'chalom, one who sees a well in his dream, Ro'eh shalom, sees shalom, right? Shalom, the idea of peace, wholeness, security, reconciliation, etc., etc. Shneimar, how do we know this? It says, Vayachparu avdei Yitzchak banachal. It says the servants of Isaac bore a well, dug a well in the river, in the wadi, I should say, right? That's better translation. Vayimtzeu sham be'er mayim chayim. And there they found a well of fresh water or living water. So he's got a footnote here. We'll take a look at that footnote and see what it says here. Right here. So what he wants to say, and however, he was not able to establish possession of the well of Isaac, until he made peace with Avimelech. I'm wondering, and I may be incorrect about this, I'm just wondering whether the reason why we're arguing over 5 wells or 4 wells is whether this well is the same well. as well that's mentioned later on. I'm going to hold it out there as a possibility. When we get to that passages, we'll see if there's some more evidence to suggest that, but that's what he's saying. Right, so that's why this is beautiful that he's explaining to us what's its connection with shalom, because he makes this treaty with Avimelech in a little bit, in that next passage. So perhaps tomorrow we'll actually get to that. We'll see. All right, going on. For Rabbi Natan Omer, so you see there's disagreement here. Rabbi Natan says Matzah Torah. This is what we'd be more comfortable, right? Someone who sees a well in his dream, it means that Torah, right, divine instruction, divine teaching, he's going to find divine teaching, Shneimar, as it says, and this is Mishle. That's the Hebrew name for Proverbs in chapter 8. Ki motzi, or motzai, those who find me, matzah chayim, have found life. So the book of Proverbs, as I says, there's a large element of the book of Proverbs which personifies wisdom, i.e. Torah. And wisdom speaks, sometimes wisdom, she speaks, in the first person. So, Uchtiv hacha, and here it says, Be'er mayim chayim, and there it says, a well of living waters, and it uses the term chayim. So we're using the word chayim in this context, we're using the word chayim in this context, and we're saying, well, since in this context, it refers to wisdom and to finding wisdom, and here it talks about finding living waters. And you see this reference to the tractate Brachot, page 56b. There's this section of Brachot that talks a lot about dream interpretation in that particular tractate. So here we go. Lichora, okay, it would appear, Hava le lahavi hapasuk de Yeshayahu, that it would make more sense for him to reference the verse in Isaiah chapter 55, have hoi kol sameh, it's like saying ahoy, right? Attention, anyone who is thirsty, lechu lamayim, go and get water. And the darshinan, which we understand to mean bay, right? Ein mayim ela Torah. That when he's talking about water, he's not talking about anything other than Torah. That's what Isaiah is referring to. In other words, if you're thirsty, spiritually thirsty, come and drink at the well of Torah. So that would have made more sense, right? It talks about being thirsty for water and then finding a well, digging a water of living waters in this wadi. However, one could say, that it's more comfortable for him, lavi pasuk zeh, to bring this verse Mishle from Proverbs, dichtiv de gam lashon metzia, because it also talks specifically about finding, right, discovering, but ire beTorah, and there it's explicitly talking about Torah. The gam hacha kativ, and not only that, here it also speaks about finding, right? In here, vayimtzeu sham, and matzah, right? Matzah. Now it does say but these are those who find me, right? That's talking about matzah. Vayimtzeu be'er mayim chayim. It says they found a well of living water. So he's got those connections. He's got, I think, what Baruch Halevi Epstein is saying is that there's more connections with this verse that he picked as opposed to the Isaiah verse, because it's more explicitly talking about Torah. So I believe that's the point he's making. Next commentary. Be'er mayim chayim, a well of living waters. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, said Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Aro'eh be'er b'chalom, one who sees a well in his dream. Yashkim, he should get up, vayomar, and he should recite, Be'er mayim chayim, he should recite the words, well of living waters, kodem, before sheyakdimenu pasuk acher, before a different verse occurs to him. He should say it first. And this is a verse from Jeremiah, okay? And it says verse 7 here. That is incorrect. It's actually verse 6, okay? Here it goes. Bahakir bir meimei. Kahakir bir meimei. Here it is. Here's the verse. Kahakir bir meimei kain hikara ra'ata. That verse says, as a well flows with water, so she flows with wickedness. Jeremiah speaking about the people of Jerusalem and the land of Israel. So we're going to see what Baruch Halevi Epstein has to tell us about this. A very different approach here, right? So anyway, Inyan Amirat Pasuk Hazeh, what the whole issue here of stating explicitly, saying, or if we want to say Amar means to think, right, to think of it. But I think here we are talking about speaking explicitly, this particular verse. You can understand it, it appears, that it's so important for a person to interpret his dream as a good dream. This I think you'll find interesting, right? That facts are facts, I suppose, right? But interpretation of facts is reality, right? We know that goes in waking experience too. And there's a whole section in this particular section of Brachot that talks about how you interpret a dream is so important. And he's going to tell you more here. He says, Ya'an, because kichol hacholomot, because all dreams holchin achar hapitaron, because any dream, the whole thing about dreams is that they follow their interpretation. So how you interpret a dream is just as important, or perhaps even more important than the dream itself, than the experience of the dream itself. And I think that is so true about life in general, because you can interpret experiences either as a good thing, as ultimately having a good result, or you can interpret things sometimes which are purely good things, and you can interpret them in a way or impute motives that are negative and bad. How terribly important it is to develop spiritual qualities that tend to see things as good, as being for the good, and that's as part of trusting God, right? Kemevoar b'Yerushalmi, as is discussed and explained in the Yerushalmi, the Talmud Yerushalmi. This stands for Ma'asar Sheni, which is second tithe. We've talked about that back in Deuteronomy. Perek Dalet, the way the Yerushalmi is divided up into chapters. Chapter 4, Halacha Vav, Halacha 6. That's the way the Yerushalmi is organized. Bavli, and in the Babylonian Talmud, again, you see Nun He 55. Before we were referring to Brachot 56, I think, right? Bet, on the B side of the page, Halachshon, the way it's expressed is Achar Hapeh, after the mouth. In the Bavli, it says something to the effect of that Kol HaCholomot Holchin Achar Hapeh. That's the way it's explained, after how you speak them, how you say them. V'hakavana achar hapitaron. And the intention there is that it's after, in other words, it follows its interpretation. V'yein lefanenu lakaman, and check out below, right, as coming up for us, Rosh Perek Miketz. This is the beginning of the Parsha of Miketz. Do any of you know what Miketz is about? How does Miketz start out? Would anybody like to tell me? I'm sure some of you know.
It's about, isn't it about Pharaoh's dream?
Exactly right. It's about dreams. And guess what? Not just about dreams, but how
Pharaoh's
Joseph.
dreams.
Yes, Pharaoh's dreams.
And
not
interpretation.
Just about, that's the point. It's about right, how Joseph interprets those dreams. It's a big section, right? But okay. Pasuk, referring the verse in this parsha, Vahi kasher patar lanu, right? So really, right before Miketz, we have the dreams of the chief butler and the chief baker, Pharaoh's chief butler and Pharaoh's chief baker, and in Miketz, when the Pharaoh has these dreams and he can't find anyone to interpret them, the chief butler, who has been restored to his position, tells Pharaoh about this experience he and the chief baker had when they were in prison with Joseph, and he says to Pharaoh, Vahi kasher patar lanu, and it was so that just as he explained to us, he interpreted for us, Kain haya, that's the way it happened. That is the way it happened. In other words, dreams are of the nature of prophecy, right? And for this reason, it's a good idea for a person to interpret for himself et chalomo, his dream, belashon tov, in a good way, to interpret it with a good interpretation, positive interpretation. And likewise, it's explained in the chapter in Brachot, haroeh, the one who sees, kama inyanim, various issues, shero'eh adam b'chalom, in other words, various situations where a person may see in a dream, veyesh bahem netiyot belashon l'ra'ah u'letova. And both of those and all those particular dream experiences can have a possibility of either in being interpreted in a negative way or in a good way. So that the person, when he wakes up, he should automatically, the first thing he should think of is to think of the fact that there is a way to understand them in a good way, in a positive way. Bekach ya'aleh li, or ya'aleh lo. This should not be a yud. I think it's a badly printed yud. I think it means, and so it shall be for him. That's what's going to come up. That's what's going to transpire. Mipnei, right? And the reason is shehachalomot holchin achar hapitaron, because dreams follow their interpretation. And this particular interpretation or drush that we just discussed, right? It's clarified. It's clarified. Torah or, okay, so there's a book called Torah or Tziyenkan, okay, the author of that book, he noted here, Hapasuk Be'er Mayim Chayim L'Shir Hashirim Dalet. He talks about the verse, a well of living waters, to Song of Songs, the book of Song of Songs, chapter 4. The Ein Zenachon, and here we go, okay, he doesn't agree. Right, Baruch Halevi Epstein says this isn't right. Chada, for one reason, the pasuk shelafanenu hu makdam, because the pasuk Be'er Mayim Chayim, referring to the story of Isaac and the well, is an earlier pasuk. It came first. V'gam hu b'Torah, and not only that, it's in the Torah. It's not in the writings. In other words, the Torah or author was saying that the verse that the Gemara is talking about is that we quoted, right? He says that this is here we go. He says this Be'er Mayim Chayim, right, is from Shir Hashirim, is what he's saying. And Baruch Halevi Epstein says, excuse me, it's not. The Be'er Mayim Chayim referring here is referring to the Genesis passage. Let me find the place here. Okay. The Od, and another reason, and not only this, but right before this, in the Gemara, in the Talmud, Bidrasha Kodemet, that is to say, in the previous drasha here, I believe, Darshinan mi pasuk zeh, we also interpret from this particular verse, right? Shaharo'eh be'er b'chalom hu chalom tov. We said that someone who sees a well, right, a well in his dream, it's a good dream. That was the previous, right? We read two different little interpretations. V'chein ben muscha shas ketiv yad. And so in the version that is a textual version in the Gemara, that is Kitvei Yad, means manuscripts, Muvah Meforosh, Pasuk Zeh Mitchilato. They quote the entire verse from its beginning. In other words, there's no way you could say it comes from Shir HaShirim. V'Iyen B'Yalkut, and he says, check out in the Yalkut. The Yalkut is it's a Sephardic, I think it's of Sephardic origin, that's called Yalkut Shimoni, and it's a midrash on the entire Bible. And I actually have a very early copy of the Yalkut Shimoni in my possession that came, it's like from 1850 something, that my dad left me. So, all right. So there we are, and we are there for today. We'll stop with that, and hopefully it'll add something to be thankful for. So I'm going to stop the share. And that's it for today. A little bit of Torah Tamima for you all.
We are 10.
Okay. Well, couldn't ask for more. Great. Good to see you, Tish and Lee. Wonderful. Who would like to respond to my Kaddish the Rabbanan?
I'll do it.
Okay. Wonderful.